Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns and Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're going to be talking about the spell Symbol. What do you think, Sam? This is kind of I'll give you my first impressions. It's a complicated spell with a lot of different stuff that can go on, but none of it is really impressive enough for me to warrant the spell level or the 1,000 gold piece cost.
So I agree with you in that the 1,000 gold piece cost and the spell level is a really tall order. That being said, I'm a sucker for spells that let me do a bunch of different things, and this spell definitely lets you do a bunch of different things. You can kind of get exactly what you want out of it. This is a 7th level spell catch-all if you have time to set up at an absurdly overcosted cost. Like, this feels like a spell that they were like, oh god, we made Symbol too good. How do we make it so that people can get like 1 or 2 casts a campaign? Just stick 1,000 gold costs on it and make them deal with the balance of it. And that makes it what could be a really cool spell kind of feel shit to me. And it's
but I mean, at the same time,
you're
once you're at the point where you're using 7th level spells, depending on the table, that 1,000 gold piece cost could be nothing.
It could be that you are in a situation where you're rolling in hundreds of thousands of gold pieces and you'd be like, yeah, great, I'm just going to get 100 of these prepped and never have to worry about it. They're just to be somewhere in our extra dimensional space that I can just pick out whenever we need to. And I spend the 10 minutes to make it, no real issues there. But there will also be tables where you're playing in an apocalypse, you're playing in a setting where you've never gotten that much gold. You've been just kind of doing the heroic adventuring for the sake of heroic adventuring, which I think is getting more and more common these days. And in those tables, you're going to be like, wow, we have 6,000 gold to our name because our economy has never really like expanded. Because D&D, okay, if we're going to briefly talk about gold costs, we should talk about how abysmal the D&D economy is and how it is the most ludicrous scaling, stupid garbage I've ever seen in my entire life. The like gold costs versus when you get them at first level versus like the higher level stuff is just so wacky and bizarre, and has so many magic items have weird arbitrary gold costs attached to them that don't necessarily mean you're getting them at when the power would suggest you're getting them. And like economies of people much smarter than me of economic backgrounds have gone deep dives as to why this financial system makes absolutely no sense. But it's also for a fantasy game, so I get it. But it just leads to a lot of situations where gold cost shouldn't be baked into the design of player spells. That's my fundamental opinion. And this is an example of a spell that really hurts from it, because there's going to be a lot of people that would like to cast a spell and go, well, we have 7 grand. I don't know if I can justify spending a 7th of that on a single spell.
All right. So what does Symbol actually do? Or, it does quite a bit, but
yeah, this is robust.
Let's dive into it.
All right, great. So the basics of casting it is you spend a minute, you put a glyph on a surface. You tell the glyph what will activate it, and it can be more or less whatever you want. So when things approach it, when a certain number of creatures are within range of it, if it's moved, touched, opened, whatever. If you put it in a book and someone opens the book, you can have that be the trigger. Once it triggers, it affects a 60-foot radius area, which is enormous, centered on the rune. So you can have it be like once 30 people are within range of it, it goes off, for example. You can then, once it goes off, you get a thing that happens that encompasses the 60-foot radius. The 60-foot radius dimly glows, and something happens. And those things are death, discord, fear, hopelessness, insanity, pain, sleep, or stunning, which all have varying uses. Most of them do kind of the same thing, which is they inflict some kind of conditional status on them. Then there are a few that are like death, 10d10 damage. It's going to kill some people, 55-ish damage. That's great. Stunning is like the perfect trap. Everything's getting crit for the rest of the session, because if they fail to save, they fail it for a full minute. There are no subsequent saves. It's pretty bonkers if you get this to affect you. Each one independently, I think like discord and hopelessness is kind of whatever. Insanity's interesting. It's just hard to work with sometimes because it just makes things unable to take actions, runs around, speaks in gibberish, so kind of trivializes an encounter. You just go and kill everything that failed to save.
It's fun though.
It's neat. And
what's hopelessness?
Hopelessness is each creature makes a charisma save. On a failed, it's overwhelmed with despair. It can't attack or target any creature with harmful abilities, spells, or magical effects, which most time means it's gonna leave. That's gonna run away for its life and be, oh god, woe is me, we found an evil trap, that kind of stuff. My favorite element of a Symbol is, as a DM tool, you can this is a dungeon in a spell. You can just have all 7 of these effects as different rooms subsequent in the dungeon, and you tell them, like, you tell the party, hey, this is the symbol for death up in front of a door, and they enter into the room, and there's a symbol somewhere in the room that they have to try not to activate as they go through it, or they'll suffer the death consequences. And you just go down the list and can do each one of them, and that's an easy 4-hour adventure going through a pretty what you would consider to be like a bog standard dungeon. You can attach some neat other little elements to each of the effects to make them somewhat more interesting, but it is like a dungeon and a spell, which I think is cool. And having that as a player tool is cool. A minute setup time is kind of a tall order. It's going to be a kind of trap you make on the fly to like bamboozle somebody. This is something where you sneak into their lair and try and set up the trap to either, most of the time it's going to be kill them with death, or make them so they're incapacitated and you just wail on them for a full minute. Those are going to be typically what you want to do with Symbol if you're the players using it.
Oh, slow down. So you think this is an on the fly kind of spell? This didn't seem to me, with the especially with the gold cost involved, it seemed to me like more like you'd want to be using this to defend your own fortress or your own cavern network or whatever.
You would. The reality of that happening is very few and far between, though. The reality of you getting instances where, like, if you're a DM and you give somebody a fortress or a manor or whatever, most of the game isn't going to be around attacking that manor. Most of the game is going to be around adventuring and seeking out plot quests and slowly developing it into a cooler and cooler, basically trophy is what it exists as. You can then throw them a bone sometimes and be like, okay, you want to incorporate all these traps. Let's have an encounter where I attack the manor. And that is where you can get mileage out of the spell. But for only a minute of casting time, this feels like a tool that you build into a plan. This is something that when you're infiltrating, whenever you're attacking a dungeon, whenever you're goading creatures and trying to figure out the best way to attack a problem. This is a big trap. It only takes a minute to set and can have really massive consequences. A lot of the effects really want you to be here too, because most of the effects they only last a minute. So if you are using this as a defensive tool, stalling the enemies for a minute when you're guarding a larger space is a little bit harder to use unless you're like at that space ready to attack them. And in which case, there isn't really that much of a difference between doing it indefinitely at your house and doing it on the fly when you just bring $5,000 worth of components around with you.
Yeah,
I think that you can definitely, if you want to be the evil wizard that spends their 30,000 gold putting 30 symbols up in their house so that if anyone has a misstep, they get obliterated. That's your business. Do what you like with your gold. This is definitely a thing, though, where I think you can get practical use out of it if, again, you have the gold to do with it, and you can find ways to set it up. There will be a lot of tables that will be unable to use this. There will be a lot of other tables that won't be able to use it, not because of the gold restriction, just because the style of adventuring is never one of setting things up. But in that last minute little corner where you both have the money, have the patience, and have the friends around you that are patient enough to try and set this kind of stuff up, you could do some neat things. That's mostly no one, though.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know. You got anything else?
I think that Symbol is a 2 out of 5 spell because of the gold cost. And even without the gold cost, it can't really get better than a 3 out of 5 because it does take a minute to prep and you aren't going to be doing this all that often. I think the dream of having it be a base defense tool is just that, a dream. And if that's what you want to do with the spell, you really need to work with your DM to make sure that like somewhere down the road, it will matter. In the instances where it does matter, though, you're just kind of like watching fireworks that you set up prior, which is neat. You'd be like, yes, the evil goblins or the aboleth and their mind-slaved minions are running in and they're just explosions going off as death goes and kills everyone, and a bunch of them go insane and start mauling each other, and a whole bunch of them get stunned, and our pet owlbear jumps in and just starts eating them. And that's, again, you set up your own fireworks display kind of with it in that case. It's a very expensive fireworks display, but that's the most realistic defensive use you're going to get out of this. I think this is a lot better as a setup tool to spring quick traps on the fly adventuring, just with like a mysterious book.
Yeah, see, I think what you like about it is what kind of steers me away from it. I don't like that there are so many options. That's too much text, too much to think about.
Definitely is one of those spells where you're like, okay, what do I pick here? Do all these seem like they do the same thing? Kind of. I just want to pick death. I don't want to read this every single time, and I'm going to screw it up at least 3 times. Even in writing my review, I screwed up because I thought you could carry the things you symboled with you. I talked really negatively about this in my review, and I'm going to amend it a little bit, but this spell is for sure not for most people. I'm one of the weirdos that goes, oh, this is nifty. I can do all this stuff with it, and it's only a 7th level spell.
Yeah, see, I mean, that whole death effect. I guess it's a trap you can set, but I'm thinking, how is it different than just casting a fireball?
It's like 10, 15 damage better than Fireball. So it's got that going for it. Which
Even upcast to 7th
even
level?
upcast, yeah.
Oh,
This
all
is
right.
55 on average versus the 42 Fireball's dealing. So like this is reasonably more damage. It also hits,
Okay,
like,
yeah, I didn't
double the
realize it was
area.
quite that devastating.
Yeah. 60. It also should be like 60-foot area is huge.
Oh,
This
yeah,
is a
that's true.
120-foot diameter sphere. This is going to kill a lot of people.
And there's, if you do make the requirement that X number of people have to be in there before it's triggered, you're guaranteeing that
Yeah.
that much damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
If you're DM and want to have a super evil villain, you can make it so that they set a symbol in the middle of town that is, once the grand festival starts and this many people get in the area, all of them die. Capitally evil, but if that's what the kind of villain you're going for,
Yeah.
there you go.
All right. Well, we've done the Sam score. I guess that's all that's left is to sign off. That was a symbol, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Sam, for your valuable insight.
Anytime.
Goodbye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns and Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.